What is special about the Stravinsky Violin Concerto? There are many things. He composed it in 1931, but he was rather insecure, actually, about writing a concerto for violin, since he was not a string player himself, and he actually consulted with composer Paul Hindemith, who is a violist, who encouraged him to go ahead and write this piece for Polish violinist Samuel Dushkin. But he did go ahead and compose this concerto, which is unlike any other violin concerto in several ways, right, Luigi?
Correct.
It's in D major, which is a typical key for violin concertos. Many of the world's great violin concertos most of them, right, are in D major. But he composed it in 4 movements. There is no cadenza, that is an extended solo for the violin.
Right.
And he felt that it was really more of a chamber piece than a concerto being really more where there's one featured player and the rest of the orchestra is accompanying. And I would argue that it might sound that way, but I would suspect that it might not feel that way because your part is so difficult.
It is very virtuosic, but not for virtuosity's sake.
Right.
It's in the grain of everything.
Right.
So it's hard, but it's not featuring the virtuosity of the violinist only. It's
right. I mean,
the whole ensemble.
The whole ensemble, and it's sort of like the worst of both worlds in a way, because it would be nice to, I think, for violin soloists to feel with all this effort that they were more sort of on top and sort of prominently heard, but it sort of keeps weaving in and out, which is one of the great beauties, I think, of this piece. 4 movements. Very unusual. Usually there are 3 movements in a concerto. The 2 middle movements are quirky and slow, but each one of these movements starts with what Stravinsky referred to as the passport chord, right? Which is 3 notes played virtually at the same time, a 9th and an 11th. These are both very large intervals for violinists to play. They are much more comfortable playing octaves and things that are smaller than octaves. That's what the hand really is set up to do. This is a very tough chord, and it's at the beginning of each one of the 4 movements. Could you play that for us? So Luigi has a pretty large hand and makes it look really easy, but it is not, because he's really stretching. There's a big stretch right here. And each one of the 4 movements starts with this very odd, very easily recognizable passport chord. The spirit of the first movement is sort of like a little march. So if you wouldn't mind, tell me what your impressions. Very neoclassical and very sort of like L'Histoire du Soldat, which is another one of his famous. Have you played L'Histoire du Soldat?
Yes.
That's a great violin chamber, violin plus chamber piece. The second movement is called Aria number 1. It has a funny kind of moodiness to it. If you wouldn't mind playing for us a little excerpt of it. It's not exactly a romantic moment. Very kind of edgy and quirky kind of a thing. The next partita, which is the 3rd movement, is much. I mean, if there is anything romantic in this concerto, I would argue.
Right, it's the second aria.
It's
the 3rd movement.
It's the 3rd movement. And there's a beautiful little section in it. If you would show just the 2nd and 3rd measures. It says cantabile, which means singing, and it has a kind of a beautiful slinkiness to it. So beautiful. It's so moody, and I should mention that Balanchine choreographed this twice in his career. The first time was in 1941, and the second time he choreographed it in a major hurry in 1972 for the Stravinsky Festival at New York City Ballet. So the version that we do is the second version. Yeah. The last movement, which is called Capriccio, which suggests playfulness, is murderously difficult. It starts with the same crazy chord and is very fast, and very close to the beginning of the movement there's this crazy marking, Staccato volant. Can you tell us what that means?
Well, staccato would be playing the notes separated. Staccate in Italian means separated. Instead of you would play. But volant adds something else, which means flying. So I guess it would have to be the.
So
he
his
does it
bow-
on one note, and it's D, because it's the most important note of the concerto.
Crazy difficult to control the rhythm of it, to be as fast as the choreography requires you to be, and to be completely steady, staccato steady, and flying off the string at the same time. Is there anything you would like to add to mention
Well,
about this concerto?
About the passport chord, there's an anecdote that apparently Stravinsky had this chord in mind, and he was having lunch with Dushkin, and he wrote it on a napkin. And when Dushkin saw it, he said, "No, that's impossible on the violin." And then I guess he went to his hotel room and tried it, and saw that it was possible. And he called him, and he said, "Oh, great, because that's going to be the passport."
Make you play it 4 times.
Yeah. Right. So every
Yeah.
movement starts.
Every
with that
movement
chord
starts
after
with that. But I think every movement feels so different that the audience may or may not be completely aware that that's happening, because the spirit of each movement is so different.